So here we are progressing nicely with our painting. You'll notice that I've added in a few more leaves and twigs and little shrubs here. Having a lot of fun doing this actually, but it's taking quite some time, as you can imagine. Now you notice in a previous video I talked about how you can have something a light color in front of a dark color in a painting. Now of course if you're painting with oils or acrylic, that's quite easy. You can just paint right on top of your background, but in watercolor it's much more challenging. Now I mentioned there were several techniques in doing this. One is that, which I showed you, is that we were able to just take some water on the brush and scrub the paint, and we were able to blot it off completely. Still a little bit of color left, but it did a pretty good job. The second technique I showed you was I used some masking tape. If you recall, I taped it off on either side. Then I used something called Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, and I was able to take that and lift the color completely out. And if you remember, we did it on this twig here. This twig here had quite a bit of color on it, but after using the technique with the masking tape and Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, we were able to take the color right out of the paper so that all you see now is the color of the paper, which appears to be a bright white. The third technique that I use, and you may be surprised that I don't use this one as often as you might think, and I will tell you why in a minute. But a very good technique for getting something light in front of a dark background is use something called masking fluid. So this is a Winsor & Newton Art masking fluid here. It's like a liquid latex rubber that you can brush onto the paper. You can paint your painting in front of it, it doesn't matter, and then when you're done you can actually remove the masking fluid. Once it's all dry, you can remove the masking fluid and it just leaves the paper there. So it's very good. So I will demonstrate that. So I use Winsor & Newton Art masking fluid, and I also use this Pebeo drawing gum. This works quite nicely as well. So I will demonstrate the technique, and then I will tell you why I don't use this as often as you might think. So first of all, in preparation for this video, I've brushed on some of this, the masking fluid. I'm not sure if you can pick it up or not, but probably you can. You just paint it on. That's it. And what I use for that, I get an old brush or a really cheap brush from the dollar store. And the first thing you need to do is put some soap on your brush to make sure that because this will really get gunked up in the bristles of the brush. So you put some soap on, get it all ready, and then you can actually brush it on. I will demonstrate that in a moment. So once it's brushed on, then it's quite nice because you can just take your paint. I'm going to get a little bit of paint here. You can get your paint and you can actually brush right in front of your masked area. So say for example I was doing this tree here and it was in a night sky, so I could just do a nice night sky, not worrying about the tree at all. Just it's all masked off, so I can just paint right on top of it. So when it dries, I have another example here. So when it dries, the paint now and the masking fluid is all nice and dry. So all you need to do then is you either use an eraser or you can even use your finger, and you can actually take the masking fluid right down to the paper. So now I have this nice white tree. So say for example I was doing a winter scene in the nighttime, I can put in some shadows here and it would still look like a nice tree in front of the night sky. So it works quite nicely. So why don't I use this more often than you might think? Well, I've run into problems with this stuff. Most of the time, 99% of the time, no problem at all. But occasionally, for some reason I do not understand. If it's anyone out there knows what the cause is, please let me know. Put it in a comment below. This is a painting that I started a couple of winters ago, and it's a winter scene. And what I've done, I've invested some time in sketching this, and you notice I got a nice winter looking, what we call a popsicle sky. Beautiful colors in it. The background is done. have all the houses here sketched and so on. So then I was painting the harbor, and I wanted to make sure that the edge of the snow was nice, white, and crisp. So what I did, I used masking fluid to put in to do the edges. The paper was completely dry. It wasn't that. It's just the paper that I've worked on for years. I don't see any variable that I've missed. Unless someone out there knows something, please let me know. I put on the masking fluid, and it is the same masking fluid I used on other paintings. Put it on, and when it was time to come off, it won't come off. It is completely fused to the paper, and so now this whole painting that I invest so much time in is ruined. For that reason, I am a little bit reluctant in using this masking fluid. But I say again, if someone knows what my problem is, please let me know. So I want to show you, I'm going to risk it again. So what I'm doing in order to demonstrate to you the process of using the masking fluid, I'm going to mask off a little piece here for those twigs. If you can see in the painting, there are a couple of really light twigs here in front of a really dark background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush, my old brush, and some soap, and I dip it in water, and I will just get some soap on the brush. This is very important when using masking fluid because it really will ruin your brushes. So use an old brush or a really cheap brush, soap it down to keep it from sticking to your brush. And then with the masking fluid, it's very important not to shake it. Now if you look at the bottom, you'll notice that there's some pigment in the masking fluid. That's to allow you to see the masking fluid once you put it on the paper. Otherwise it would be transparent and you'd have problems seeing it. But don't shake the bottle. That would be a problem because what happens is it forms bubbles and you have a really hard time then controlling the masking fluid. So what I've done in preparation for this, I've taken a little stick and I've stirred it. Not shaken, but stirred. Then I would take my masking fluid with my brush already prepared with the soap, dip it in the masking fluid, and just paint over the area that I want to keep white. So we'll just gently put this down here. It's a little hard sometimes to control, but this is really good stuff if you're doing a really light line in front of a dark background. So I'll do a couple here. And there's enough pigment in the masking fluid to keep track of where it is. Like that. So later on we will paint around this and we will remove the masking fluid in these areas. Hopefully it will come off this time. I've never had a problem with the Winsor & Newton stuff. Another thing I'd like to mention is I know I often mention the brand Winsor & Newton. I am not being sponsored by Winsor & Newton. I do not receive anything to endorse their product. And really the purpose of these videos, they're not even meant to be training videos. What I'm doing here is just taking you through the process that I follow. Lots of videos on YouTube. You can see processes that other people follow, and I watch quite a few of them. I enjoy watching them. But this is a process that I've developed over a period of over 40 years. Some lessons I've learned that works for me. So what I want to do in this video is just show you what I do. I'm not saying you have to do it this way. And I'm not really doing training videos, at least not yet. Maybe in the future I will. But I'm just showing you how I do it. So we'll continue on with our painting here. I will continue to paint in some of these twigs. I'm going to show you how I do some of these leaves and twigs and so on as we go around. There's lots of time for that yet. But I just wanted to show you another technique. Now, why didn't I use this technique over here? Because it's a bit of a risk. Every time I use it, I'm a little bit scared. So anyway, I will continue painting here and we will follow up again later in another video. Thanks.